The gym was silent except for the faint squeak of sneakers on polished wood and the distant hum of the school's air conditioning. Daniel Carter, a janitor at Willow Creek High, stood in the shadows, gripping his mop handle, watching a group of teenagers laugh as they tossed a crumpled soda can back and forth. His heart sank, not because of their littering, but because one of those voices belonged to his son, Ethan. At 16, Ethan was spiraling, caught in a crowd that mocked the weak and celebrated cruelty. Daniel, a single dad who'd been fighting to keep his son on the right path since his wife passed away 4 years ago, felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. Little did he know, an offhand joke from those same kids would soon change everything, not just for him and Ethan, but for the entire school. Daniel's life hadn't always been about scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. Once, he'd been a martial arts instructor, a black belt in karate with a small dojo where he taught discipline, respect, and focus. But when cancer took his wife, Sarah, the medical bills piled up and the dojo closed. Grief and debt forced him into a job at Willow Creek, where he blended into the background, invisible to students who saw him as just the janitor. Ethan, once a bright-eyed kid who'd practiced karate moves with his dad in their backyard, now barely spoke to him. The boy's anger at the world, fueled by the loss of his mom and the embarrassment of his dad's job, had built a wall between them. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the spark ignited. Daniel was cleaning the gym after school when he overheard the basketball team, led by a cocky senior named Jake, taunting Ethan about his dad. "Hey, Ethan, why don't you get your janitor dad to teach us some kung fu?" Jake sneered, his friends erupting in laughter. Ethan's face reddened, but he didn't defend Daniel. Instead, he muttered, "Yeah, maybe he could sweep the floor with you." The group laughed harder, and Jake, seizing the moment, strutted over to Daniel. "Yo, Mr. Janitor, why don't you teach us some karate? Bet you'd be a real sensei." The sarcasm dripped like venom, and the other kids snickered, waiting for Daniel to shrink away. But Daniel didn't shrink. He set his mop against the wall, wiped his hands on his worn jeans, and looked Jake in the eye. "You want to learn karate?" he asked calmly. The gym went quiet. Jake, caught off guard, smirked. "Sure, old man. Show us what you got." Daniel nodded, his voice steady. "Tomorrow, after school. Bring anyone who wants to learn. I'll be here." The kids exchanged glances, expecting a joke, but Daniel's gaze held no trace of humor. Ethan, standing at the edge of the group, looked away, his jaw tight. That night, Daniel sat at their small kitchen table, staring at a faded photo of Sarah and Ethan from better days. He wondered if he was crazy to take on Jake's challenge. He hadn't taught in years, and his body wasn't what it used to be. Late nights cleaning and early mornings worrying about Ethan had taken their toll. But something in Jake's taunt had stirred a fire in him. Maybe this was his chance to reach Ethan, to show him the man he used to be, the man he still was beneath the janitor's uniform. He pulled out his old karate gi from a box in the closet, the white fabric creased but clean, and laid it out for the next day. The following afternoon, the gym was packed. Word had spread like wildfire. The janitor was going to play sensei. Kids filled the bleachers, some there to learn, others to mock. Ethan slouched in the back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Daniel walked in, wearing his gi, his posture straight despite the ache in his knees. The room buzzed with whispers, but he ignored them. "Karate isn't about fighting," he began, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "It's about discipline, respect, and control. If you're here to laugh, leave now. If you're here to learn, step forward." To everyone's surprise, a handful of kids did step forward. Some from the basketball team, others from the fringes of the school's social circles, kids who were tired of being invisible or pushed around. Jake, pressured by his friend's taunts, joined too, though his smirk suggested he was still playing a game. Daniel started with the basics: stances, blocks, breathing. His movements were deliberate, precise, betraying years of mastery. The skeptics in the bleachers fell silent as Daniel corrected forms with gentle firmness, his hands steady but kind. Ethan watched, his expression shifting from embarrassment to something softer, almost curious. The first challenge came quickly. Jake, eager to test Daniel, threw a sloppy punch during a sparring drill. Daniel deflected it effortlessly, guiding Jake's arm into a controlled lock without hurting him. "Control," Daniel said, releasing him. "You're stronger than you think, but strength without focus is just noise." Jake, humiliated but intrigued, nodded. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. The other kids noticed, and a shift began. What started as a joke became a real class, with Daniel teaching twice a week after his janitorial shift. But the road wasn't smooth. Ethan refused to join, even as his friends started showing up. "I'm not going to be part of your little show, Dad," he snapped one night, storming to his room. Daniel's heart ached, but he didn't push. He knew Ethan was wrestling with shame. Shame about their life, about the janitor's job, about the hole Sarah's death had left. At school, Daniel faced skepticism from the administration. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, called him in, warning that an unauthorized karate club could be a liability. "You're a janitor, Daniel, not a coach," Hargrove said, not unkindly. "This needs to stop unless you're certified." Daniel, swallowing his pride, promised to get the paperwork in order, even though it meant digging into their meager savings for certification fees. Then there was Jake. While he'd stopped mocking Daniel outright, his attitude remained a hurdle. He challenged every lesson, testing Daniel's patience. One day, during a drill, Jake shoved a smaller kid, Mia, a quiet freshman who'd joined to build confidence. She hit the mat hard, tears springing to her eyes. The gym went still. Daniel stepped in, his voice low but firm. "Jake, you want to prove you're tough? Pick on someone your own size. Or better yet, help her up." Jake hesitated, then extended a hand to Mia, mumbling an apology. It was a small victory, but it showed Daniel that even the hardest hearts could soften. Weeks turned into months, and the karate class grew. Mia, who'd been too shy to speak at first, started leading warm-ups. Other kids, like Carlos, a junior who'd been bullied for his weight, found strength in mastering katas. Daniel wove life lessons into the training, talking about resilience, about standing up without knocking others down. He shared stories of his own struggles, losing Sarah, losing the dojo, but never losing hope. The kids listened, even the ones who'd come to scoff. Ethan, though still distant, began lingering at the gym's edge, watching. The second challenge hit when Ethan got into trouble. A fight broke out in the cafeteria, and Ethan, caught up in his crowd's bravado, threw a punch. He was suspended for a week, and Daniel was called to a meeting with Hargrove. "I know you're trying, Daniel," the principal said, "but Ethan's heading down a bad path. Your classes are inspiring the kids, but they're not reaching him." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. That night, he sat Ethan down. "I'm not giving up on you," he said. "But you need to decide who you want to be." Ethan didn't respond, but the next day, he showed up to the karate class, silent but present. Ethan's presence changed everything. He was rusty, his movements stiff, but Daniel treated him like any other student, correcting his form with the same patience he showed everyone. The other kids rallied around him, sensing the stakes. Jake, surprisingly, became Ethan's sparring partner, their rivalry turning into a grudging respect. But the biggest test came when the school board caught wind of the classes. A parent complained that an uncertified janitor teaching karate was unsafe. Hargrove, under pressure, told Daniel the classes had to end unless he could prove their value. Daniel saw an opportunity. He proposed a demonstration at the school's spring assembly, a showcase of what the kids had learned, not just in karate but in character. The board agreed, reluctantly. The weeks leading up to the event were grueling. Daniel worked late nights to afford the certification, trained the kids with every spare moment, and prayed Ethan wouldn't pull away again. The kids, sensing the stakes, poured their hearts into it. Mia choreographed a kata routine. Carlos volunteered to speak about how karate had helped him stand up to bullies. Even Jake, once the class clown, took it seriously, helping younger kids perfect their moves. The assembly was packed. Students, teachers, parents, and the school board filled the gym. Daniel stood at the front, his GI crisp, his voice steady as he introduced the group. The kids performed flawlessly, their katas sharp, their sparring controlled but powerful. Mia's routine brought cheers. Carlos's speech drew tears. Ethan, paired with Jake, executed a sparring sequence that showed not just skill but trust. When it was over, Daniel stepped forward. "This isn't about fighting," he said. "It's about building. These kids are stronger than they knew. And so are we all when we choose respect over anger, courage over fear." The gym erupted in applause. Hargrove, visibly moved, announced the classes could continue, fully funded as an official club. The board, impressed, even offered to pay